So, you want to get big and strong? Could it really be as easy as eat everything in sight? If only. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to know about setting up your diet for a mass gaining phase. Today, we're going to talk about a phase of bodybuilding that is very easy to mess up. Bulking. We'll talk about some of the common mistakes people make, the importance of calories and macros, and how you can work out what you need to gain the most muscle with the least amount of body fat. I want to point out that I won't be recommending any particular supplements in this video, but I may recommend some commonly available supplement types that could be useful. Let's get started. First off, let's talk terminology. You've probably heard about bulking, massing, and mass gaining phases. So what's the difference? In reality, there is none. All of them mean a phase of eating extra calories while training hard to gain as much muscle as possible. Some people will say that the difference is the amount of body fat that you gain with the extra muscle, but to be honest, no one really wants to gain a load of extra body fat anyway. So for this video, I'll use the words interchangeably. It really doesn't matter. So the idea of having specific mass gaining and cutting or fat loss phases comes from bodybuilding culture, where the idea is to put on as much muscle as possible while keeping body fat to a minimum. If you do it in phases, you gain muscle for a while, then lose some fat. Then you go back to building muscle and so on. It's probably a better idea to do phases like this in bodybuilding because it may be easier to focus on one or the other and make decent progress, instead of trying to do both and not making much progress very quickly at all. With a dedicated bulking phase, you want to tailor your nutrition so that you're eating more calories than you need to maintain weight. This is called a calorie surplus, and it's essential for building as much muscle as possible. The problem is, if you have a very large calorie surplus, if you eat way more calories than you need, you run the risk of putting on a lot of extra body fat, which will make any subsequent cutting phases longer than you may like. That's why it's important to at least start with the smallest calorie surplus possible that still allows you to progress with your weight and strength gain. Don't get me wrong. You will gain some body fat while massing, and you need to accept that, because if you try to build muscle with absolutely no fat gain, your progress will be so slow you may lose all motivation. On the other side of the coin, we have what's known as a dreamer bulk. This is where you just eat as much as possible of anything that's not nailed down, with the intention of putting on as much weight as possible. Don't get me wrong, dreamer bulks work, and you will put on muscle and strength, but you will also put on a load of extra body fat. If you're okay with that, great. I just think that many of the people watching this probably want to take a slightly more conservative approach. Now, before we talk about calories and macros, there is a very important elephant in the room to discuss. None of the nutrition advice I'm about to give you will help you build muscle if you are not training regularly and intensively enough. The real stimulus for muscle growth comes from resistance exercise, so make sure you've got the right training plan in place. Now, let's talk about eating. So when it comes to your nutrition, for muscle gain, the two most important factors by far are calories and protein. Calories provide the energy you need to fuel your workouts and for all the metabolic processes needed to build muscle, and protein provides the raw materials, amino acids, needed to construct your muscles. Protein also stimulates muscle protein synthesis, MPS, which is the process we use for building muscle tissue. Let's start with calories. There are two methods we can use for this. Firstly, you could calculate your maintenance calories. That's how many calories you need to maintain your body weight, using the National Institute of Health's Body Weight Planner, or any online calorie calculator will help you calculate this. If you want more info on how to calculate this yourself, check out the article in the description below. Once you know how many calories you need to maintain weight, you need to start eating more if you want to gain weight. And for that, it really helps to know how much you're eating right now. You can use a calorie or macro tracking app, literally any of them is fine, or you can just keep a rough food diary of what you eat daily, and based on what you eat regularly, just increase your calories or portion sizes. The food diary is a lot less accurate, but can still work. The advantage of the calorie tracker is it gives you details on macronutrients like proteins, carbs, and fat, which we'll talk about a little later. What's really important at this stage is monitoring your progress. And the easiest way to do that is by weighing yourself daily. Without monitoring your progress, you have no idea if you're gaining weight or not. I say measure it daily because your scale weight can change a lot from day to day. So if you measure it daily, you get a weekly average, which is probably a much better measure of your progress. A good rate of weight gain is probably between 1 to 2% of body weight per month. That's pretty modest, but it's enough to keep you motivated by seeing consistent progress, but not so much that you'll put on a lot of body fat. If your rate of weight gain is too slow, add some more calories gradually until it gets where you want it to be. If you're gaining too quickly, remove some calories to slow it down a little. It takes time patience, trial and error, and that's why many people hire a coach to help them with all those little decisions. I'd also recommend tracking your lifts because you should also be getting stronger during a mass gaining phase. You might also like to take measurements around your arms, legs, chest on a monthly basis, but don't expect big changes to happen quickly. Here's the thing, you probably don't even need to use a calorie calculator because they are just estimations of what you should eat. Genuinely think the best way is to monitor your body weight and track your calories and just increase your calories a little until your weight starts to go up. A good starting point is conservative. So add about 300 calories daily on top of your maintenance and increase from there to start seeing your weight go up. So we've mentioned calories. The next most important nutrient to talk about is protein. I've already done a whole video on the importance of protein for muscle gain. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. Here's the condensed version. Protein can stimulate muscle protein synthesis, or MPS, but you can only stimulate it a certain amount before it reaches its maximum. And then it has to drop to baseline levels before you can stimulate it again, which usually takes every 3 hours or so. That means you should aim for 4 to 6 meals a day, each of 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per meal, every 3 hours or so. That works out at between 1.6 and 2.4 grams per kilogram per day, which seems to be a range that the scientific evidence agrees with. Eating protein relatively frequently in sufficient doses is another key aspect of the muscle gain process. It can take a little work to fit that into your schedule, which is why I'd always recommend starting with 4 daily protein meals to make it easier for you to manage. Great whole food protein sources include lean meat, eggs, fish, dairy products like yogurts, cheeses, and quark, and vegetarian sources like tofu, textured vegetable protein, myprotein products, beans, peas, and lentils. Protein powders may offer a cheap and convenient option if you're having trouble getting enough protein from your diet alone. But remember, make sure your diet is well balanced first before considering adding protein supplements. So now you know how many calories and how much protein you need. What about carbs and fat? Getting sufficient fat is essential for maintaining a good hormonal environment that will be conducive to muscle growth. So a low-fat diet, below 20% of calories from fat, is probably not a great idea for building muscle. Aiming for around 40% fat may be beneficial for maintaining adequate testosterone levels. Great sources of fat include nuts, nut butters, seeds. Make sure you grind them up to actually get the fat out of them. Olive oil and oily fish at least twice a week. If you don't like oily fish, then consider a fish oil or algal oil supplement. Keep your saturated fat intake low, again, for health purposes, by reducing your intake of fatty red or processed meats, coconut oil, butter, cream. And as for carbs, well, they can make up the rest of your daily calories, and they offer a lot of benefits in a muscle gain phase. They help improve training quality, they reduce fatigue in the gym, and in general, carbs are much more filling than fats, and they provide fiber, which is very beneficial for your long-term health. On top of that, carbs stored as glycogen in your muscles may even help with muscle growth, and they can help to reduce muscle breakdown too. I really recommend getting the majority of your carbs from whole food sources, like whole grains, like oats, whole wheat products, starchy vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes, fruit and vegetables, and even beans, peas, and lentils. These will provide you with a load of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients to keep you healthy, and they'll also provide a lot of fiber to keep you feeling fuller for longer. Now, the only time all these whole food carbs might be a problem is if you get full very easily, and that keeps you from getting enough calories consistently to build muscle. In fact, many people who consider themselves to be hard gainers are probably suffering from one of two problems. One, they're not training hard enough or regularly enough, or they're not eating enough. Consistency with your training and diet is essential when either bulking or cutting. So if you're having trouble with appetite, that's when you might want to eat slightly fewer whole food carb sources. Instead, you might find it easier and more convenient to eat some refined carb sources instead of a whole meal filled with whole grains, potatoes, legumes, and vegetables. This is why mass gainers have become very popular. They're basically a mix of protein powder and some easy to digest calories, usually a mix of carbs and fats. If you're having trouble eating enough for consistent weight gain, they may be a convenient way to increase calories without making you feel overly full. So that's a very brief overview of how to plan your mass gaining calories and macronutrients. One final thing to mention about bulking is the importance of patience. Building muscle takes far longer than losing a similar amount of body fat. And because of that, it's really easy to lose motivation. This is why you hear of new trainees jumping from one program to another and changing their diet every week. Don't be one of them. Stick with a plan, monitor your progress properly, and make adjustments sensibly to make sure you keep gaining weight and strength. It's not an easy process, but if you stick to it in the long term, you will see results and you will be very proud of them. So How was that? Do you think you know how to set up a mass gaining diet now? As always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.